Hey everyone, and welcome to Backseat Sports. I'm Josh, that is Caleb, and wow. Whew, it's been a whirlwind this week. We have a ton to talk about today with the big news we'll be breaking down with the firing of Nebraska defensive coordinator Erik Chinander, and of course the big game that turned into a blowout, Oklahoma, Nebraska this weekend. We'll be breaking that down and also talking some of Scott Frost's legacy now in this bye week this week. So it's going to be a juicy one, probably get a little heated as well. Caleb, how you doing?
You know, I'm doing just fine. For 5 minutes there in the first quarter, I was doing really good. I about lost my voice in those first 5 minutes.
Man, that first 5 minutes was euphoria.
Oh, baby. It felt like we were back. Trey Palmer touchdown,
Enshrine Mickey Joseph into the Hall of Fame right now type situation.
Yeah, and then, we didn't score, but then we stopped him again. And then, it kind of went downhill from there.
It went downhill real quick, yeah.
It was a bummer. I can't say it didn't go as how we expected. I guess I predicted we'd maybe score one more touchdown and they'd score one less touchdown.
Yeah.
I
think we were both in agreement that you should probably put the money on Oklahoma and at the time was the 11.5 points. That was the smart money. Bet to make, and it played out that way. Probably more extreme than any Husker fan would have hoped for. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're going to start off here breaking down this Oklahoma game. Then we're going to get into some of the talk with Chinander and maybe some of the Sellout Streak conversation and the future of Nebraska football. We'll talk about some of the pros and the cons of the best case, worst case scenarios. Since it is a bye week, we have a little bit of time to talk about that type of stuff in this video. And then we'll be talking about Scott Frost's legacy. So it's going to be an interesting one with a lot of different topics. So off the rip, this Oklahoma game, obviously it did not go as planned. 49-14, Oklahoma dominated the first half before they took their foot off the pedal to our mercy in the second half. It was ugly. Oklahoma had 580 yards and a decent chunk of that was in the first half.
Hey, basically. That's 62 less than last week.
Yeah. Wow. Again, could you imagine if our offense was scoring in this game, how many yards Oklahoma would have put up?
Oh, 800.
No, but seriously though,
yeah,
let's just say in the middle of the third quarter, the score was 35-21, and Oklahoma kept their starters in and kept their foot on the pedal. Literally, they would have had 700 plus yards.
They would have had a 70 bomb on us.
This defense was getting sliced and diced. We'll talk about that in a second. So let's start on the offensive side of the ball, though. The first drive was immaculate, capped off by a beautiful touchdown. And like you said, the hype was euphoric after that. What are the takeaways from this offense and just the abysmal performance from the offensive line?
Yeah, what you just said, they're the abysmal performance from the offensive line. It's more than a sore thumb. It's more than an elephant in the room. It's just the room at this point. Our offensive line is so incredibly bad. We talked about it before the season that it was going to be bad. And I figured it was going to be awful, right? Because we lost pieces. But this is even worse than what you could have seen. I will like a little star, a little asterisk say Hickson has been okay at his job, and
for sure.
I will mention that we don't call out his name and that he's doing mostly good things. He's definitely improved. But my goodness, Ben Hart, Turner Cochran, Brock Bando, Piper, they're all, wow. You just watch plays at the tape where they're just whiffing. They're just absolutely missing guys.
Especially
they don't
Corcoran
know where to go.
Ben Hart.
Yeah, they don't know where they're going, who to pick out. There was times where they only rushed 4 and we still didn't block a guy. It is that bad. There was times where they rushed 3 and they still got to the quarterback and we had 5 guys on the line. What the heck is going on there?
Right. No,
nothing's going on up here.
Right. And like you said, so before, when we made our predictions video, we didn't know what was going to happen with Teddy Prohaska at that point, but then Mickey announced in the press conference that he's out for the season. And,
so now
this offensive line moving forward, again, with Prohaska out at left tackle, that means Turner Corcoran's probably going to start every game at left tackle again. And again, last year, he was the lowest rated tackle in the country in pass coverage, literally a 0 rating on PFF out of over 600 left tackles in the country.
Guys, 0.
And we saw it again in this game when both Ben Hart and Corcoran are out there at tackle, this team gets obliterated.
It's open season. for the defense just on Casey Thompson. We saw it. I mean, that's why he pulled him early. It's because he's going to get hurt. Yeah, I mean, my goodness, it's just a giant bummer. Again, Casey Thompson looks good. It's just hard.
The miracle they only got 4 sacks, honestly.
It really is. I mean, he's pretty good in the pocket, and like that's just kudos to him. He is a good quarterback. It's a bummer we don't get to see more of him. I think though, on the bright side, if there is some hopefully, like we tried out some different guys. We saw Williams get some more snaps. We saw like some shifting of things. They're trying stuff out. It looks like our coaching staff is trying to get this figured out for once. Instead of just painfully sticking with what we have for the whole season.
Yeah, like you said, at left guard, it was a cycling door of guys at left guard trying to figure out who's going to be there.
Thank goodness.
Because what we saw in the last game was, and while we were at least a little optimistic, like, okay, if Prohaska is hurt, maybe it's not the end of the world. He wasn't playing well before this, so it's not as big of a loss as it was last season when he looked like our best offensive lineman. Obviously, after that ACL tear, he hasn't come back the same player. And now him getting hurt again, I mean, it's looking real bad for the rest of his career. Yeah. So that's just tough to see. But anyway, after he got hurt last game, Kevin Williams came in at left tackle and looked all right. And so we were assuming Kevin Williams was going to start at left tackle. And then when Turner came out there at the start of the game, I'm like, oh no. Yeah. Here we go. This is going to be tragic.
Bueno.
Yeah,
it was.
What is there a narrative for the hope for this offensive line throughout the season? I mean, the only hope is that even with how bad his offensive line has been, we've been decent, at least in every other game. And not every team is going to be Oklahoma moving forward, at least.
Yeah, I mean, they are one of the more disruptive teams in the country. Yeah, they're super athletic again. And Brent Venables is one of the best blitzers in the whole nation as a head coach. We've seen this and his success at Clemson. And our offensive line can't handle just a straightforward bull rush, let alone mesh blitzes and every other thing, that Brent Venables is going to throw at you. So, yeah, it was in for a rough day anyway.
Outside of just exposing what we already knew was going to be a problem, probably the worst news or the worst thing that happened in this game was A.J. Allen going down in the middle of this game. It's been reported that it's a collarbone issue. And if that's the case, I mean, that's devastating for this backfield, considering how great he's looked early in his career.
Yeah.
And obviously Anthony Grant's still the lead back, but man, bro, AJ Allen in that game, he had so much juice in that first half. He looked fast on the edge. He had a few shots through the gap that were explosive, and you saw him bounce to the outside. I'm like, whoa, like this is some speed through the gap we haven't seen since Mo Washington in Nebraska. Or maybe you could say Wandale, and he looked so good. And if he's hurt and misses the rest of the season, dude, that is going to blow.
Yeah, it'd be a bummer. Hopefully he comes back. Yeah, I think it was on 3 podcasts or something like that reported that maybe it looked like a collarbone injury. At least the only good news with that, if that is maybe the case, is, as long as it's not like ACL Achilles, ACL Achilles, and he can still redshirt. And, it's not going to hurt his lower leg. So that's kind of the pluses with that, I guess, if that is the case.
That's the silver line.
Yeah, there is some hope there. But yeah, I mean, it's sad because the 1-2 punches look so good with him. Ooh. And obviously Anthony Grant is, they're both just really good. It's exciting.
I mean, Anthony Grant had the best 5-yard run loss of all time. He broke 7 tackles to lose 5 yards because
it was like the Tommy
Frazier
run, except there was no offensive line, so there's no blocks on the other way.
Oh,
so yeah,
gosh, man. So, I mean, in the future, I think we're still going to see some probably pretty big games from this offense. I mean, again, like Trey Palmer, he had 10 catches in this game, and he still looks great, and he played really well. The problem is it's just not obvious who the next guy is, and it seems like Omar Manning is just non-existent at this point. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, after his miracle game 1, has done absolutely nothing and hasn't looked good in the snaps he's got. So it's really down to Alante Brown, Marcus Washington, and then probably Oliver Martin and Brody Belt as just the next guy up there after Trey Palmer.
Again, hopefully all these guys can stick around. And I think some wins would really, really help here.
The other thing I wanted to mention was man, if you would have told me that Gabe Ervin would be our leading rusher in this game, he had 7 carries for 60 yards. And it was his best snaps of the season by far in this game. But man, talk about nowhere to go for Anthony Grant and AJ Allen in this game. It was just abysmal.
Yeah, it couldn't have been worse. Offensive line, I mean, no push. I mean, no. Anthony Grant walking into the Oklahoma game had 0 carries that were negative yards. That was the first one in this Oklahoma game. And
Oklahoma had 9 tackles for loss in this game.
Yeah.
For negative 56 yards. In the 65 yards lost in tackles for loss in the first 3 games combined, and then 56 in this one.
Yeah,
and I think it was tragic.
Just what makes me think of just how sad this was too is I think of that little shovel pass, Trey Palmer jet sweep. That play looked really promising, and like we pulled Chancellor Brewington, and we had some solid blocks. Turner just let a dude straight through, and like besides that, like it was all blocked. It was just blows up the play minus 6-7 yards, and it was just a microcosm of this whole game. It's like there was times where we had plays where we had things that could have gone well for us, but our offensive line just, I mean, there's nowhere else to just point the finger to on the offensive line or on our offense than the offensive line. It's just been so ridiculous.
Such a tier below every other position. Like it's one of the worst it's probably the worst in the Big Ten or one of the worst in the Big Ten.
It's definitely the worst in the Big Ten, and we're pushing worse in the country. Like we are legitimately pushing the worst offensive line in the country. I think right now it's like 100, maybe it's like 28th out of 131.
That wouldn't be surprising. So
it is bad.
Oh,
I mean, you could pull again, like I said with the North Dakota team, like I'd take their offensive line and just transplant it. Yeah, no, I meant it because like literally they're ranked above us. It's that bad.
It's insane. The few things there was a few plays I liked a lot, like the rollout with Casey Thompson. Again, early in the game, we did a good job of getting Casey into rhythm, and then we just kind of we didn't really get back to it with some of the screen passes, and Oklahoma started playing closer to the line of scrimmage and being more aggressive, and we even saw some of those screen passes that got blown up because obviously Venables told them, like, the second your guy drops back for the bubble screen, attack, and they were doing it, and it definitely worked well. So they were scheming and adjusting well, but
they played like a drop down defense after that and really protected like everything. And their safeties were playing so close to everything too. I mean, I love it when you have fast players. You can just put like so many guys on the line of scrimmage and just make it look like anything. And it was so great because there'd be like 8 guys on the line. It's like, oh, we're dropping 3. Oh, we're blitzing 6.
Oh, we're setting the corner. Yeah, exactly. They were disguising it all.
It was great. Which I would love that with Nebraska to get to that place because it's very fun to watch.
Let's talk about the defense.
Woo!
Thoughts on this defense?
Even better than the offensive line. Who knew that you could be worse than our offensive line? Our defense.
Oh, man. It is tough out there for the defense. Again, they gave up over 1,000 yards in 6 quarters to Georgia Southern in 4 and then 2 to Oklahoma. There's not many positives. Like,
can you even call that defense?
We were sitting here trying to be like, okay, how can we put some silver lining on this? Who are the pros and cons here? Basically, the only pros that for the most part, Quentin Newsome. I wish we had Quentin Nelson. Quentin Newsome looks like our best player and has been pretty consistent overall. Played fairly well in this game. Outside of that, I mean,
he can actually cover someone down the field.
An obvious next great best player. Maybe you could say O'Shawn Mathis is fairly consistent overall this season. Garrett Nelson's not terrible either. And then
but he's not good at tackling.
Right. And then Marquez Buford's all right. And he had a bad game. I'd probably say
Buford's then. Oh, I mean, the dude's ankles got broken a few times. I mean, granted, that guy's getting put in poor situations. For the D-line, the linebackers, and he's just left on a one-man island. It's like he either gets the tackle or it's a touchdown. It's a tough spot to be. There's just not a silver lining. I mean, our linebackers are
terrible.
Bonzo beans. I mean, Henrich. I mean, hey, Henrich is not the leading guy on our team in missed tackles anymore. That's right. Our friend
Luke Reimer.
Hey, he had 4 missed tackles this game, vaulting him up to the number 1 spot of missed tackles on this defense. I mean, it's an exciting race. It's the only thing our defense is good at is missing tackles.
Miles Farmer's at 7, and Nick Henrich is at 6, and then Garrett Nelson's at 4. So again,
Farmer's been so disappointing too. My goodness, bad, just bad.
I mean, in coverage, he's fine, but man, if he ever has to make a tackle, the dude he can't.
No, it's impossible.
There was one play specifically, I think, was it with Eric Gray when he cut it through the middle of the field and Henrich and Farmer collided, and it was just like, what are we looking at here?
Or there was one time that Nick Henrich, instead of tackling the running back just decided to tackle Gifford instead. It's like, oh, hey, Isaac Gifford, I'm going to tackle you instead. I mean, it's just a blooper reel. I mean, you could just put like the funny music behind our defense, clip the whole thing and just play it.
But I mean, you sent me some charts about like defensive EPA in college football, and which is expected points added. Adjusted for strength of schedule, Nebraska it's abysmal. I may be able to pop them up here on the screen because like they are literally
we're in a tier of our own
in both charts. Like
on how
next
bad
level.
we are.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we are the worst defense in college football. I mean, it's impressive. We're not defense.
Like overall cornerback room. I mean, Tommy Hill, the guy that we really needed Tommy Hill to hit this year for the defense to again, we talked about how we thought our secondary could be pretty good. One had to hit. Either the pass rush had to hit or the secondary had to hit. I mean, for the most part, the secondary hasn't really hit. I mean, Tommy Hill got absolutely torched in this game. Even got benched at one point. Brought in like Braxton Clark.
That's
and
2 games in a row he's been
2 games
benched.
or more. Yeah, 2 games in a row. So at this point, we don't really have another answer for our second cornerback outside of Quentin Newsome. Just not very many answers at all on the defensive side, especially in the linebacking core. Up front, surprisingly, they had better games this game than you would have thought overall. Like even Ty Robinson had a decent game, which is, I mean, for against Oklahoma, shocking. So you gotta love seeing that. I mean, if Ty Robinson can start finding some footing here, then I mean, we're gonna need it moving forward, especially heading into Big Ten play. I mean, we got to find a corner to replace Tommy Hill or a guy on the other side of the field to be a consistent starter over there. If we don't, we're going to be in big time trouble. And then Isaac Gifford had a terrible game as well. Tackling, not even that good in coverage either. Worst game of the season for sure. And so, you don't have it. Obviously, again, the nickelback downgrade from JoJo to, Henrich / Kalervek this year has just been terrible. With that said, let's talk Erik Chinander. We'll talk about some of the hope for this defense moving forward kind of in this conversation. So Erik Chinander was fired, Nebraska's defensive coordinator. Woo. That's now, 2 coaches gone in 2 weeks here. But Chinander was one of the UCF guys, obviously came here with Frost, and he's gone now. So you lost the offensive leader in Scott Frost. You lost the defensive leader in Erik Chinander from the last 4 years. And now Bill Busch takes over, who came in to this team this year. In his past, he was the safeties coach at LSU the past 3 years there with Mickey Joseph down at LSU. Obviously, they produced some great talent there like Grant Delpit over the last 3 years, some really talented NFL guys. And so you like seeing that. And then Bill Busch before that was actually Rutgers DB coach. And in 2016, 2017, in 2017, he was also the co-defensive coordinator. And then at Ohio State, he was the defensive quality controls coach in 2015. And before that, Wisconsin's DB coach in 2013, 2014. And even before that, a defensive coordinator at Utah State and at some other places as well. So he has some of that history calling plays defensively, and obviously has been a successful defensive back coach, but he hasn't done it in a while when it comes to being a full-blown defensive coordinator.
Yeah, it's really interesting. He was brought on as our special teams coach, and now it almost makes me wonder at this point, just looking at his resume, if this was almost like in the works. Like if they kind of knew the
fallback option.
Yeah, if they kind of knew if we hire Bill Busch just in case this season doesn't go to plan, we have a backup. I mean, it's just feeling more and more like this way because Mickey becomes the interim. He's a first year. Bill Busch becomes
both from LSU.
It's just really interesting at this point. I'm excited to see what we can do. Obviously, I'm here for some different defensive philosophies. Josh and I have kind of clashed with how Erik Chinander has run his defense in the last few years. Again, it works against good teams. But against, the bad teams, we feel like we're way too conservative, not aggressive enough, not creative enough on the defensive end to really make any splashes. And again, we haven't been good at pass rush. We haven't, besides last year where we had, Cam Taylor-Britt and JoJo, 2 NFL quality players. And again, our linebackers just have never really hit to look good whatsoever. So again, I'm excited to see, switch it to a full-blown 4-3 maybe. Just anything. I'll see anything, any creative changes.
We don't really know what his philosophy is or what differences he has between Chinander. At this point, it would basically be all questions. Inherently, you can't change too much of the scheme in like a week and a half or so before the Indiana game. Inherently, you have to have probably a very similar playbook, but maybe it's just the order of the plays and how you want to align yourself. And obviously, if he prefers to have a more aggressive secondary, one that likes to press more, and one's like, or whatever it is. Like those are the types of differences and different nuances you're going to see, different looks you might see. Maybe, yeah, whether it's more 4-3, less 4-3. Yeah, different blitz packages. That type of stuff will be just a little bit different. So it'll be interesting to see the nuances here moving forward. But it's impossible to know what that's actually going to look like before we see it.
Yeah, and again, a new evaluator of maybe he likes some different defensive guys that, he's seen guys through special teams and the defense. Maybe some different guys get the start. Again, just anything, any new looks that we can get, because our defense, we need anything we can get at this point.
That's the thing.
It doesn't matter what it is. I mean,
yeah,
again,
so is that the hope for the defense moving forward? Then, I mean, obviously for this team to win, 3, 4, 5 more games, we're going to need a massive step up defensive performance wise. So the only narratives that really make sense here is that the scheming is actually going to make a big difference, which is hard to imagine. But, you never know.
Well, yeah, it's just hard to imagine what you could do, what you could implement.
How much different it could look. Exactly.
Yeah, because a scheme will definitely help. But, yeah, how fast can you implement this to the guys understand?
I mean, unless Chinander was just that bad.
Who knows?
It's hard to imagine he was that bad. But,
I mean, the other thing is, out of the other coordinators, he seemed like the most competent. Again, he actually stayed here with Frost through his whole tenure. And even at UCF, he still gave up plenty of points. It was
he was the big question hire when Frost got hired. We're like, are we really going to bring in the guy whose defense was basically getting torched all season long, but because they were putting up 45 plus points a game, they were winning? That was always the question. So that is one narrative, I think, for the defense. I think the next probably big one would potentially be can the bye week do wonders for finding those next guys up? And maybe because we were getting blown out, we got to see some of these younger guys get some snaps in there. And maybe those are the guys that could potentially be the ones that change the game for us defensively down the road here.
Yeah, maybe it's Tim and Lynham who came in for 8 snaps and he looks solid. Javier Morton, or maybe Ernest Hausman. Maybe they can unlock him. We saw him start over Heinrichs. He looked okay. I mean,
he's definitely faster. I mean, he's more athletic. He can cover the field.
He's more athletic, but his tackling has still been a problem.
Yeah, hopefully, and he's blown some coverages.
Them tackling in practice and stuff and getting more reps. Hopefully, that'll propel them over the edge. Again, just any hope we can have, because our offensive line and our defense are definitely the things that are holding this back at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a guy like Omar Brown, he got moved from cornerback to safety. Maybe you can find a different place for him on the defense, because he does look athletic and seem like he can make plays. So it is those types of things. It's like, will one of these guys break out throughout the year with a new coach in charge? Will they start seeing the field more? Will there be different guys out there? Those are question marks for sure. The only other thing I could even think of is that the defense had given up on Erik Chinander, that they also didn't believe in Erik Chinander. And so we'll actually get more out of this defense now that he's not there. Again,
that's possible.
There's no actual evidence of that. It's just a possibility that probably should be mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hypothesis for sure. Again, we will take any way that our defense can even get it remotely better at this point. So
yeah, I mean, overall, do you see it as the right decision that Chinander's fired? I mean, obviously,
I do. So. I just think it's just interesting. I don't remember a lot of coordinators getting fired mid-season. That is very uncommon. So it'll be odd. Hopefully, it works out for us, but it definitely is not something that you see every day in college football. So it is definitely a bold choice for sure.
All right, so let's kind of just shift our conversation here to kind of the worst and best case scenarios the rest of the season, because again, it's a bye week. We have some time to talk about some of these things. So obviously moving forward, we got the Indiana game. We'll do a predictions video about that earlier next week. Where are you at with this team now, with knowing kind of having a pretty good feel for our strengths, our weaknesses, and our situation right now? Like, how do you feel about Indiana, Rutgers, Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota, heading into the Big Ten stretch?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's an exciting opportunity for all of them. I think that there is a lot to be played for. I mean, we have, 2/3 of our season left in front of us.
For sure.
Bowl eligibility in front of us. Good games to be had. Wins. Things that are exciting
winnable
your
games.
Team. Yeah, fun memories to be had as teammates. I mean, you can win games in this turmoil. And again, that's when it's a lot of fun, is, making plays, winning games. And that's, what playing the sport's all about. So I think there's a lot to play for. And when it talks about, Indiana, I mean, we both picked before the season. We thought that it was the most likely Big Ten win for us. So I think it's exciting. I mean, you just got to put the Oklahoma game behind you.
So, I mean, where are you at, like, best case scenario, worst case scenario right here? Like, what are the narratives?
I mean, I think, like, to get 5 wins in this is definitely best case scenario. Obviously, I mean, yeah, sure. Best case scenario is winning them all. But
for sure.
Yeah.
I think a realistic best case scenario is probably 6. Right?
6 total wins. I'm saying just 5.
Oh, you're saying 5 more.
5 more wins.
Yeah. I'm right with you.
So, Iowa, you know, they have a horrible offense, but a really good defense. That'll be obviously it's been a tough game every year, but it's
for sure.
I think it'll be a close game as long as our defense can.
All you gotta do is just force a few turnovers, and voila, you know, you got a few points on the board, and then suddenly you have a chance.
And you hold on to the ball well, unlike we have the last few years, which is, you know, what cost us against Iowa last year. Indiana, Rutgers, Illinois, and then I'd say Purdue is the other tough one. Like I'd say Indiana, Illinois, and Rutgers are
all the narratives make enough sense.
That's a pretty fair matchup. We should definitely feel optimistic that if we prepare and have a good week that we can beat those guys. I think Purdue and Iowa again.
Yeah, I mean, Purdue's interesting. They're 1-2 right now, so we'll definitely learn a lot more about them over the next few weeks. But I mean, obviously they lost to Penn State in a really close one, and then they lost to Syracuse.
The problem is, like, you know, Aiden O'Connell still like torched those guys, and like he's going to put up an insane amount of yards. And then there's the next tier of obviously Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then Michigan, who's in a whole separate tier, which is a lot more like the Oklahoma tier, where that's probably not going to happen. And then Wisconsin, again, they lost a game, but they still look good. Their defense is still very solid. And then Minnesota's looked very good too. So they're going to be a problem. I mean, Wisconsin and Minnesota are probably competing for the Big Ten West at this point. At the early goings, obviously we all are, but they feel like they're most likely going to be at the top toward the end of the season. So
yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, probably the most realistic situation is we win like half those games, you know? And like, let's say you beat like an Indiana, Illinois, Rutgers, and then you win one of Purdue and Iowa, or you win. Let's say you win 3 of those 5. You know, that's probably the more likely situation.
Yeah, 4-8's looking
fairly likely. Yeah, that would be.
I mean, I'd be happy not to be 3-9 again. Like to win more of these games would be a positive at this point.
Think about how bad 4-8 would feel this season. Like we'd feel like we were awful, and we'd still have a better record than last year. That's how easy this schedule is.
Yeah, I guess people just like they look on last year with rose-colored glasses because like they forget the Illinois game. Like they forget some of those. Like, you know, you look at the Northwestern game and that's good, but there was plenty of just garbage from last year too.
I don't know. Worst case scenario. I mean, there still is an on the table here. That's a 1-11 is not out of the picture.
Yeah, if we can't recover, if our locker room's checked out, if nobody cares.
That is scary. If we lost to Indiana, then it's red alert. I mean, I'm with you for sure. Like you said, if we lose to Indiana, and this is kind of where the Sellout Streak conversation comes into play, then the Illinois game is red alert for the Sellout Streak.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we're kind of in the late hour here where there's still tickets available for all the rest of the Big Ten games.
They're selling packages, which I've never seen.
Yeah, there's packages being sold. They advertised it at the last Nebraska game. I mean, when's the last time? I can't. Probably the Bill Callahan era is probably when it happened. Or maybe probably the end of the Mike Riley era. But we always get to this point where it's like, man, we're at 385 consecutive sellouts. But like we're at a real like Jeopardy limbo here where there's still tickets that need to be sold.
This close to 400?
It'd be a really big bummer if we did not make it. And I just feel like it's such a big selling point for our fans too. I'd be bummed if our
and the recruiting is just cool. It's like this place. This is one thing you can bank on, no matter how bad we are. Is that this place will be sold out? Yeah. And so it's like that will hurt if we lose that. I think the people who say that it doesn't matter and that we should purposely end it, I think that's just not well based, because I do think that the referencing back to Tom Osborne and the good old days all the time.
Like we would actually be irrelevant if the fans stopped caring, because then there's no press, no one cares. Like, us being like the Cubs fans, like lovable losers here for this point. I mean, that's the saddest we've been at. Like,
because we're the only thing Urban Meyer said. He loves this fan base. He loves this place. He loves this campus, the tradition.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only thing holding it together. That's all we got is the fans and this stuff, you know? I mean, that's it.
So we'll see. I mean, I and like Joe Cloud was also talking about, like, man, these fans are better than this, you know? Like, it is really tough. So I don't know. So when it comes
Fox
to Scott,
was like, please help these guys. They're dying.
Yeah. When it comes to Scott Frost's legacy, I mean, where are you at?
Frankly, the worst coach that has ever in my lifetime that I've ever seen coach the Huskers.
Well, that's a given.
And he talks so much about Mike Riley pushing the program back. I mean, this guy left so much worse of turmoil. He caused dissension within the school, within the fan base, within
based
the
off all
team.
these reports. Jeez.
I mean, you thought Bo Pelini left bad in a huff. Like Scott Frost within, like, dude, he was like, how did Rome collapse? It was within itself. That was Scott Frost. He within, like, undermined everything is what it feels like.
The biggest thing for me is, like, when you look back at his whole legacy, it's that basically most of his best players were, I mean, Riley's guys. I mean, all besides basically Cam Taylor-Britt. I mean, Cam Taylor-Britt is the only bright spot of Frost's tenure.
And Wandale, who left.
Well, yeah, but he drove him out of town, so that really tarnished that.
Yeah, I mean, the dude, for as much excuses as he had, his whole defense and his best things that we had going for him, and the shelf, what do you say? Like, the cabinets were bare. Like,
yeah.
Well, guess what? All the guys that you started on the field were Riley guys.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, Cam Jurgens would be probably the next best, but when he was here, he wasn't some world beater. It's just that he has the NFL build to be a great
Frost
center.
Just let him be, like, instead of having someone else be a center, he went through the painstaking starting him for 4 years, which just made our team garbage.
He was awful for the first two.
Yeah, it lost us games because he couldn't get somebody else.
He couldn't get somebody else for the first 2 seasons. I mean, like you said, when you think of the Riley guys that were in the Frost era, JoJo Doman, Stanley Morgan Jr., Austin Allen, Brendan Jaimes, DiCaprio Boodle, Khalil Davis, Luke Gifford, Jack Stoll, Lamar Jackson, Ben Stilley, Carlos Davis, Azigbo, Dismuke, Spielman, Damian Daniels. Like,
those are a lot of NFL guys.
Really good guys and a lot of NFL guys. And then when you look at Frost's guys, especially guys who aren't transfers, because the transfers bailed out Frost a handful of times. Cam Taylor-Britt, and then Wandale while he was here before Frost drove him out of town. And then, like, Jurgens, Adrian Martinez. And then
Garrett Nelson, Quentin Newsome, Mo Washington, Luke Reimer, Buford, Brown, Allen,
wow,
Caleb
that list
Tanner,
is way worse. I mean,
Nick Henrich, Ty Robinson, Ramir Johnson. Yeah, that's a big difference.
It's not even close. Yeah. There was a problem with either Frost's ability to evaluate talent, his ability to keep talent around, or his ability to develop talent.
I mean, from the reports that we've gotten at this point, it was just pure laziness and apathy. I mean, so many recruits, the offensive line this whole time were just bust after bust after bust.
I mean, obviously he did a good job of bringing in the transfers. I mean, you know, when you got like guys like Casey Thompson or Samari Toure or like Deontay Williams or Travis Vokolek.
Was that his good job or just the boosters who had a bunch of money?
Well, I mean, in the past, though, like guys again like Samari Toure, Travis Vokolek, Darian Daniels, you know, Dedrick Mills, those guys were all pretty good. So it's like, you know, he had a good job bringing in some of the transfers.
It's the point where Scott Frost really lost me. Well, it was probably like that Northwestern choke.
The COVID year was when both of us decided Frost had to go.
Yeah, the Illinois game where we just got blown out in Memorial Stadium by Illinois.
But it was really the Minnesota game
where there was 35. Yeah, the Minnesota game where 35 guys are gone and you just get crushed.
And they didn't even practice the whole week before the game. And
yeah, they
we
could not practice.
Beat PJ Fleck when they haven't practiced the whole week.
Yeah.
And they're missing like 35 depth pieces and they're starting no one. Like, and they're missing multiple starters. Like, are you kidding me? And then we end up not playing the bowl game. We decide it was just like, how do you build a team that doesn't want to play the bowl game? At the beginning of the season, the talk was we'll play anywhere to play football. And then by the end of the season, we're like, we have a chance to play a bowl game, which Frost hadn't done yet.
We'd rather go home.
I mean, again, I get the narrative like it's only one more week of practice, but at the same time, it's one more week of practice.
He made a big deal of it. Like, well, these last few years we haven't got bowl game practices. You get clipped that multiple times.
And again, he deflected blame because he put it as a team vote. If you're garnishing a team that doesn't want to play football, then what are you doing?
You play all season for a bowl game.
Well, and the fact
you play
that
all season.
You only played 8 games. So I mean, really, like, you're drastically increasing your season when you play one more. you know? Like, oh my gosh. And like Deontay Williams came out and he was like, I can't believe we didn't go play.
Yeah, and
because he's a dog, because he actually wants to play. Because he's a real player.
You only get that chance once. There's only a short period of time. And guess what? Deontay Williams never got to play in a bowl game because Scott Frost said, you know what? Oh, we should just go home instead.
Yeah, none of his guys did.
Nobody got to play in a bowl game.
It's like, I just don't understand. Those types of things were the things where I'm like, all right, that's the nail in the coffin. After the Minnesota thing, and then you have the bowl game fiasco. It's like,
then we went 3-9, and like before the season, like there was hot seat talks already that season, and then people were like, "Oh, if he goes 5-7, like he's gone." And then we go 3-9, like a worse low. By the way, funny, like hilarious. The rock bottom comment just gets like more ironic and ironic like every year because he said that when we went 5-7, that this is rock bottom, and the man found a way to never get to 5 wins again. So we skid lower and lower from rock bottom.
Yeah, I mean, again,
we like 3-9, and you bring him back, and then Josh and I talked about this too, where it's like every coach that sucked for 4 years always got fired in the 5th year. It had only happened like 5 times in like the history of like the college football era, and like
where you didn't make a bowl game for the first 4,
and then they bring him back for some idiotic reason. And then ours wasn't idiotic.
Like the 5
it was more
times
the money.
that a coach got brought back for the 5th season, they were fired after the 5th season.
Fired. Yeah, and we didn't even make it to the end of the season because obviously...
No, I'm with you. I mean, again, like that 2020 class was also just like, that was crazy too. They all left.
And we didn't pick anybody up after the COVID season. Like, Scott Frost recruiting has been bad. Like last year was
after the 2020
because
year,
of the transfers.
Xavier Betts, Keyshawn Green, Marcus Fleming, Henry Gray, Nadab Joseph, and Jaden Francois all are out of that class.
Wow.
That's insane. Because they were all 4-stars. Betts was 4-star, Keyshawn Green 4-star, Fleming 4-star, Gray, Nadab Joseph 4-star, Jaden Francois 4-star. Sevion Morrison, he's gone.
Yeah.
4-star, he's gone. And so the only remaining 4-stars are Turner Corcoran and Omar Manning. Wow. Oh, and Logan Smothers. Oh man, that was a bust of a class. Wow. We all hope that there's better days ahead. And I mean, we both love the vibe Mickey Joseph gives off, and how epic was that entrance into the game. And like the hype of the game was sick. Like, man, I want this to work so bad. Nothing would be better than us getting 5 or 6 more wins this season and potentially Mickey retaining this job. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that's just a great point you bring up. I saw something on the sideline that I had not seen under the Scott Frost era, which is just ridiculous. And that's coaching. Like, legitimately, with Scott Frost, you just didn't see the guys, like the positional coaches, talking to them about the game, about what was happening. After every drive, I know this is ridiculous that you're hearing this, but legitimately, like, coaches were not down there talking to the players about the drives. And like, I for the first time, like, just saw all the guys huddled around, paying attention to what the coach said is saying, like actually, utilizing it. And like, that was, and Mickey Joseph was also talking with the players. Scott Frost, besides a handful of a couple times when he chewed like our quarterback out, really didn't talk to the players either. I mean, it's a weird, surprising thing to see. But again, it's just a hopeful thing of like, man, like they were actually doing their jobs down there.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. I think there's still enough reasons to be optimistic and have some fun this season where there's enough games that we could win. That this thing
Mickey's going to win some games.
Turn around.
Mickey's going to win some
games.
If
we catch some heat here, it's possible. Indiana and Rutgers and Purdue and Illinois, and you're on like 4 in a row, then who knows? Anyway, long story short, drop your comments down below on your thoughts on Frost, your thoughts on Mickey Joseph and the potential for the rest of the season, your thoughts on the Oklahoma game, your thoughts on everything we talked about in this video, and the thoughts on the rest of the season. We love to hear them. But as always, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This has been Backseat Sports. And guys, we will see you next time.
Go Big Red.